Maina Karobia is a member of parliament at the East African Legislative Assembly. Good morning.
Good morning to you,
Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you, Eric. And City and
Ndu.
Yes. The easiest name on the planet. I know.
Yeah, for hosting me. This is my maiden appearance on this particular show. And I'm grateful. This is one of the best shows that we have in the country. In fact, I'm getting a lot of reviews on my inbox that you have been hosted in my best show.
Already.
Yeah, so thank you for hosting me.
Karibu sana. Welcome to the hot seat of the situation.
Thank you.
To welcome you, CT has the day's proverb.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Lesotho. It's actually written Lesotho, but it's pronounced Lesotho. Sickness accompanies a waning moon. A new moon cures diseases.
Sickness accompanies a waning moon. A new moon cures diseases. Mheshimiwa,
Wow.
what are you hearing?
What I'm hearing is that in the darkest of moments, and when there are turbulences, sometimes we have to be patient and wait for, or even plan for something that is going to rescue people from the darkest of the moments. And sometimes we should not look at ourselves and think that we are condemned to be in our situation. Sometimes we might be, our solution might be just around the corner, and sometimes also the solutions can come out of the nature. That's how I look at it, and I like the context of Lesotho. But why don't we read so much about the change of regimes in Lesotho? I think, is it blood? Is there bloodshed, or it's soft coups?
It began as a monarchy.
Oh, okay.
So the first problem they had, the person who was the king was told to step aside, went into exile. Okay? And then the military took over. But in the recent past, they haven't had coups. What they've had is changes in government. Someone comes in as a prime minister. There are a few disagreements, there are changes. It's a problem that many countries that have had a monarchy have. When they now have a constitutional government that has a parliament, you'll find the monarchy has followers. These individuals who then get into power and form a government also have followers. So it's usually that balance and who, whether the military supports one group or supports the other. Now, the uniqueness, I said, of this country, literally everybody comes from the same tribe.
Sure.
So they don't have tribal issues per se. They may have clan issues, but when you have a monarchy, that's where the divide comes in. Yes.
Wow.
And by the way, there are not many. In terms of people, there are around 2.2 million. So meaning Nairobi has over 2.5 times the number of people in the country. Yes.
All right. So there's still a monarchy though, right?
Yes, but ceremonial.
Okay. Haya, what do you make of his interpretation of the proverb?
You know, he's spot on, but when I read this poem, what came to my mind was, when you are unwell, as in you may be physically unwell, or when you are surrounded by tribulation, the world looks very bleak. You see the world through your problem, the eyes of your problem, through the lens of your problem. But the new moon here is a new day, a new reckoning, a new dispensation, a change. So when things change, and maybe the problem that was burdening you is eased, somehow the world looks better. It looks nicer. I'm told that when people are in love, they have the same feeling, that the world looks nicer, people look happier, people behave kinder, I'm told. Yes.
You're told.
Yes.
Okay. Mheshimiwa Maina Karobia.
Yes.
This is your first time as a member of parliament of the East African Legislative Assembly.
Yeah, sure.
First time also as a member of parliament at such a national level.
Yes.
What were you doing before you got this election?
Eric, my journey is quite a journey.
Mm-hmm.
My journey was journey.
Journey is a journey. Hapa ni wapi?
Hapa ni wapi. So before then, I was actively involved in the youth campaigns of the ruling party. By then, the campaigns of His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto. We met around 2018. By then, I was leading a youth group called Youth and Governance. It was an NGO where I was the president. It had networks across the country. But then I found a person who was presenting a case of leadership. But before then, actually, I happened to have interacted, though just as a person among the crowd, in 2013 with the deputy president when they were looking for the seat as a dynamic duo with the President Uhuru. So that was in Taita Taveta. So I attended a rally. So in the kind of speech he made there, I was among the crowd. I was not in a VIP section. The kind of speech he made there, I was convinced that this man knows what he is doing with his leadership, and he has at least a vision of where he can take a country if he is offered leadership. So from then, that is from 2013 all the way to 2017, we have not interacted. So 2018, in my circles as a youth leader at the national level, I was exposed to also young people in leadership. So it's from there we formed a lobby group called Youth for Ruto, which was now to lead the campaigns in the run-up to 2022 elections. Over time from there, I also participated in or volunteered actually. I volunteered in his communication works. Remember, campaign is all about communicating the agenda that you envision to do when you assume leadership. So I was volunteering, and any other necessity in terms of campaign that would have taken place between 2018 and 2022. So I was able also to mobilize young people across the country under the lobby group of Youth for Ruto. When the party came, I was able to transition this particular youth to the party, the UDA party. In fact, I'm among the very first people who by then visited what you would call Jubilee Asili. You remember that?
The new office that you people had come up with.
Exactly. So we were able to transition our support base to the party. And from then we were able to volunteer also at the party. I was the party secretariat. From there, I assumed leadership in the UDA Youth League. And it is from my participation, even in the by-elections that were coming along the way, that also my leadership was also noticed. And from there, when the president and the deputy president assumed leadership, in African society, you can go and hunt an antelope. But once it is hunted, it's upon the people who are in the hunting party who are supposed to share what was hunted. So I was able to be given a piece of the antelope, and that is the position of Member of Parliament in the East African Legislative Assembly.
What's your shareholder number?
My shareholder number is that I think I'm member 1,200 and something. Yeah.
In the shareholder.
In the party.
In this company.
In the party.
No.
Okay. So what this role then that you have taken up, what does it then now mean that you do for Kenya, and how does that translate from what you had been doing before?
Yes.
And in this new role, what do you realize your responsibility is?
Wow, that's a good question. First of all, what defines my role as a Member of Parliament is the foundational principles or the pillars of East Africa community. Among them is the custom union, common market, monetary union, and also what you call political federation. Among those pillars, that's why I derive my roles, because my legislation and my statements must align with those particular pillars. So even my laws, my bills must be in line with that. And so far, we have been able to have to largely legislate around the common market and custom union. What we are working towards is what you'd call also around the common market, where we can have what you call mutual recognition of professional qualification, where a person in Kenya can easily practice his or her profession in either of the countries in East Africa. Like, for instance, a lawyer, a doctor, surveyors, engineers, all that. And it begins...
A teacher.
And a teacher.
Please.
Yeah, actually, because I'm a teacher also. It's good I say that. Mutual recognition of professional qualification, because as of now, unless there is a unique gap among the countries of the region, the partner states, that's when you find people coming around. But the continuation of what I'm doing, what I was doing as a youth leader, and now as a member of parliament, because I'm also still a youth leader, is that I'm working around a bill on East Africa Youth Council. Remember, we have the youth councils, the national youth councils. Pretty much in Kenya, it still has a lot of work to be done. But at the regional level, I want us to have an East Africa Youth Council where young people can freely express themselves. They can be able to influence decisions. They can be able to even have this East Africa Youth Council serve as an incubator of future leaders. Last week, and it's the reason as to why I have been interested with what city was given an example of Lesotho and the South African leadership system. 2 weeks ago, I was in South Africa, and it was a conference around youth and ICT. But the conference was bringing people from across the continent. So I interacted with a person from Gambia. Previously I had read about the youth of Gambia because it is one of the strongest. It has one of the strongest youth councils in the African continent. So I met a real example. I met with a person who can give me real information about what they do, and the influence of the Gambian Youth Council is that even leaders, they influence even the selection of the minister or ministers in the Gambian government. And that is the kind of influence I envision with this particular National Youth Council. I believe, Eric and Ndu and City, that the people who can drive the integration process of East African community are actually young people, because to a large extent, the older generation have that prejudices that we look at each other from the point of Wakenya wako na Ukenya mwingi, Watanzania wako na Utanzania mingi, watu wa Congo wako na kudansi kwingi. But young people, you look at us. I look at a person from another country from the point of the value that person adds. I look at that person from the best practices that they have in their country and what I can learn. Like the Gambian example, what the best practices I was learning from that person. I didn't look at that Gambian friend of mine from the point of, you are from the farthest part of African continent, and maybe we don't have anything of value that we can learn from each other. But let me say that the people who can best drive the integration process are young people. The people who orchestrated even the independence of our country. Pretty much the Mboyas and what have you, they were young people. So I believe, even to date, the people who can drive the integration of East African community and the unity of African continent, because of the exposure, because of the energy, because of the looking for opportunities, the drive to look for opportunities, are actually young people.
But do you need an institution to do that? I mean, look at the young people. Kenya's representatives into EALA, there's yourself, there's Kalonzo, there's Winnie Odinga, and then there's Suleiman Shabal. So the three of you are young people. You're already in the assembly. If you look at our parliament, there are very many young people. Our county assemblies, they're young people. Do you need an extra organ for the young people to be able to participate strongly?
You need a platform, or you also need an organ, because of what you'd call legitimacy. From the point of, when I'm speaking, I can have, I can talk from an institution that is specified or has specific objectives around the youth issues. Sometimes you'll find, today, if I speak as a member of parliament, or if I speak as a member of parliament, and I speak about youth issues, the youth outside there will say that I'm speaking as a politician, and maybe I'm very genuine with what I'm talking about. So sometimes it's good you offer them a platform upon which you can have from your position or as a member of parliament, and them in their legitimately recognized institution as a youth council, you can have an interaction so that they also feel they are being given a platform to express themselves. Otherwise, if you leave them without a platform upon which they can express themselves, you'll be assumed to be speaking from a political point of view and from a selfish point of view.
Now, I am 65 years old. Should people who are of my age also form a group and call themselves whatever it is?
You're a minority and marginalized.
I
You
understand.
should form now one group for this special group of people.
No,
Is that what?
you are absolutely right. But I was going to push it 60 years. We are not a minority. We are actually dying off. I would put it around 50 going onwards. And I would look at people who in this country own the certain means of production. See, now, one group has numbers. The others have an abundance of material wealth.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, I am simply saying, by raising this issue, that even when people caucus, the formation of a group arises from an understanding that people have already caucused. You are merely formalizing it.
Yes.
And formalizing it, there's a hope that you will then be able to harness the enormous benefit you see. Now, people who have resources already do that. They are in companies, they are directors, they are in boards, they already do it. And there are organizations that will actually oversee the work. Like, for instance, you say Kenya Association of Manufacturers. You really need to be a manufacturer. Is that not so on that business? But the question I'm asking now, when it comes to the youth, what will be the clarion call? What is this thing that you are going to put as the fundamental pillars that will guarantee that what you hope to achieve will be achieved? Because you don't remain a youth forever. You will get old.
Yeah, sure.
And one of the things that will most definitively happen is when you get into a position of authority and power, you will change. So
I think what the objectives that would make the youth to actually be the driving force, or even to caucus and also be able to have what you'd call considerable power, or the reason as to why they should actually caucus is because, first of all, we are beginning from the point of inadequacy or lacking resources, for instance, or access to resources, also access to information. Remember, this, like you said, the older generation have an advantage of resources. They also have an advantage of information.
Not necessarily. They have an advantage of specific knowledge and a greater breadth of that knowledge,
Exactly.
born over a longer period of
Yes.
time. But if you're talking about just the availability and the access to it,
Yes.
younger people have a quick access to it. Older people tend to be a little reluctant to acquire new information.
Now this is the point. The fact that they have they have that knowledge and they have the resources makes the younger generation to actually find strength in them forming caucuses or organizations or associations, so that they can be able to complement the gaps in information, knowledge, and also resources when they are united. And that's why, for me, I advocate to always have organizations and associations so that people can be able to complement the gaps that they have. Otherwise, if we leave each other to assume that Maina Karobia can do this thing alone, I think we will not be able to achieve more. In fact, there's an African saying, I don't know whether it's a saying or a proverb, that says that if you want to go far, please walk together or run together. But if you want to go fast, walk alone. So because we want to go very far and we want to achieve more, we better form associations and organizations.
Right.
Yes.
So you're advocating for institutions.
Yes.
All right. Let's
And
take a
actually,
break.
the effectiveness and independence of those particular institutions,
Very
even at the local level and also at the international level.
When one talks about the East African community, and we talk about all the progress we've made, the commonality of tariffs, movement of this, all these things, they are geared to bring about a certain occurrence and a certain situation. Now, what is envisioned? When we've achieved our goal, what will East Africa be? For instance, how will we handle the political leadership if we are an East African country, not just a common market? How will we handle services? How will we handle everything that ordinarily is run within a country and independently so? How do we foresee this?
Let me say that the greater vision, or where personally I see the East African community transition to, is one state where we have one government comprised of one president, court, and also parliament. To a great extent, that consultation is at high level, but there was a review in 2017-2022 that among the pillars, now it's not political federation, it's political confederation.
Okay.
More or less what the Swiss has.
Yeah.
Switzerland. So the greater vision is that we are going to have one government, where we also have a common currency. Right now, we are doing what you call constitutional consultation. A month ago, it was held in Kenya, in the what you would call headquarters of former provinces: Eldoret, Embu, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, and also Nairobi. I happen to have participated in the Nakuru one.
Eldoret was not the head of a province.
No, I'm just saying.
Yes.
What you'd call.
Nakuru was.
Yes. So it was held in those major towns of our country. So the consultations is where they is being done across the 7 states. Then we are going to do what you'd call like a referendum when we have a draft document from the consultations. And that's where people now, the East Africans, are going to determine the political destiny that as a community or as a region we are going to follow, whether it will be a federation or full federation as a state, or confederation where we can have a smooth transition. In terms of services, I think those services are going to be what we would call midwifed by the pillars that I talked of: common currency, custom union, and common market. But by and large, right now, we have so many laws and policies that are easing delivery of services and what have you, and goods, but still states are still they are still claiming their sovereign power to determine how a state relates with another state. So, and I think the best way we can do as East Africa is we also need to donate as sovereign states. And I like what the president has been talking about, empowering these regional and continental institutions. I think states should not continue holding power and assuming that they can control how the integration process. They need to delegate the power or donate power to institutions that
will manage it.
That are managing the greater vision of integration and unity of African continent and our region, East Africa.
Why do you think the countries are holding on to that power? Is it the politicians in those countries, or is it the bureaucrats in those countries?
Like, for instance, the East African point of view, it is actually the bureaucrats. We have a lot of issues with the people at the ministerial level. Not only, actually, around issues. The president is giving this particular directive. You find bureaucrats are still trying to manage the situation, trying to manage what the heads of state are saying. So I think at the East Africa level, for me, I find the bureaucrats to be a little bit difficult people to push the integration process. At the continental level, politicians also have issues in regards to the whole unity of the region.
Can you imagine a situation where, for instance, the Commission on Revenue Allocation wants to talk about what they think is an ideal according to them? You've looked, you've determined, you've gotten your data, and you say this is the best way of going about it, and they propose to have a bill that this decision and the implementation should bypass Parliament and should only be managed by the cabinet. Do you ever see such a thing happening?
It's not.
What do you think? Yeah, precisely, Parliament will massacre that thing.
True.
Why? Because they will see themselves as being it's like food being pulled from, which is already in your mouth, being removed from your mouth.
So do you find that as you are at the East African Legislative Assembly, right? It doesn't matter in what capacity, that essentially what is happening then is an extension of state sovereignty at that level. It is not necessarily because we're all there for the integration and the proliferation of East African brotherhood. It is more that what the powers that be from the people who sent you are going to be proliferated at the assembly.
Yep.
It is the voice of the powers at home that you will be pushing for there, not necessarily this integration and
precisely. I fully agree with what you're saying, but I also think that one of the reasons as to why there has been that lag behind in terms of the integration process and also harmonization of services and products and running of the affairs is because we have taken too long. If you keep postponing a certain process, the foundational ideals, the foundational objectives are going to change because of the emerging dynamics of the continued postponement and the relationship, the changing of the behavior of our interaction together. So you find if the integration, when we were beginning this process was in the 1990s, or the late 1990s, 99 around there. So we are 24 years.
Actually, that was the new process. There was an earlier process.
There was an earlier process of Akina Julius Nyerere.
Yes, which had taken us fairly far.
Which has taken, in fact, we had shared institutions.
Yes, we did.
A lot of, in fact, I think that one was doing far better than what we are having right now. So, when we continue postponing the specific objectives that we should achieve under certain timelines, then you find a new information comes in, behavior of how states are behaving towards each other also changes the whole idea or the whole perception around individual states towards the integration process. And that's why, for me, I think if we are to integrate, let us integrate now. If we are to achieve certain objectives, let us do them in timelines. Like, for instance, the monetary union, we were supposed to have a single currency by 2024.
Yeah.
I don't know because of which reasons they postponed that particular objective to 2031.
Bureaucracy, again.
No. It's not. Bureaucracy is blamed because they are seen as the people who actually do the nuts and bolts movements of this thing. But they answer to other people. So let's look further up. The bureaucrats don't go around making those decisions. They implement decisions that have been made.
It's a big thing that, ought to be happening at the East Africa level.
Yeah, sure. But we have to appreciate that Kenya have been, with the new regime, for me, and give credit to it is due, Eric. I know you might accuse me that I'm a shareholder. But give credit to it is, this government has really tried to improve Kenya's image in regards to the African cause, at the continental level and also at the regional level. I have seen speeches by the president being made of how we should reform our continental institution and also regional institution. I have seen the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I have also seen the Minister of East African Community talk of how we should lead the integration process, and they are pro that. Now, actually, what we should be asking ourselves, are we actually walking the talk as a country?
That's the question.
We are talking of integration. We are talking of reforms.
Are the words accompanied by deeds?
Are we actually, as Kenyans, or as a country, because now when we go there, it's not about Kenyans, it is about as a country, Kenya.
Yeah.
Are we, as the Kenyan, as the East African community, are we ensuring there is timely remittance of contribution, because East African community is run by contribution? Are we actually opening up our borders to products from other countries, so that we are now talking of a common market? So you cannot be talking of integration process
when you have some non-tariff barriers being
then
imposed
along the way you are closing borders for some products not to come to the country.
But even better still, if you are going to preach to your neighbors about how good it is, how they ought to conduct themselves, this term we use, good governance, don't you think you'd have a stronger voice if internally that is precisely what you had? Because they look and say, but these guys are talking about things they do. You can see how it's helping them. So when they tell us, it makes a lot of sense, because we can see. That division between what politicians say and what they do now gets us to what Eric was asking earlier on. We have a situation in this country. Old men talk, young men die. Okay? It's a story of wars around the world. It's not a story of Kenya.
Yes.
And now we have a situation where you cannot ignore the numbers that young people represent in this country. Or if you do, you ignore it at your own peril. Again, politicians talk. People who are comfortable talk. But again, young people die. Not just suffer, they die, because the life and the hope that they had is extinguished. It's gone. And I'm not talking about people who have been shot. I'm talking about people who had hopes and now have no hope. That's death, because you thought there were opportunities waiting for you, and you come to that realization that this thing is not going to happen.
Right.
Now, we then talk about the manifestations of some of these things, and we look at the mental health situation of this country. And the people who bear the brunt, again, are the youth. The people who should be gearing up to take this country to the next level are already in a state of despondency.
We are where we are. A majority of the population in this country, again, the youth, all right? Yes. And as we talk about, maybe the two leaders, national leaders should have dialogue, should sit down, should agree. Where's the voice of the youth? You've been a youth leader in this country. Where's the voice of the youth in the current goings on in Kenya?
The voice of the youth, actually, young people have also expressed themselves about their dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs. And that's why we are talking of having a strong institution. The youth, or the policy document of the youth, actually talks of the National Youth Council being the legitimate voice of the youth. I think to a large extent, young leaders at the parliamentary level, at the county assembly level, have expressed their dissatisfaction with the whole political scenario that we are having in the country. But that is not enough. We need to be seen, and that's why I said, sometimes if a politician talks about the dissatisfaction or the satisfaction of the political situation, they might be seen, they are talking from the point of how convenient it is for them. And that's why we need to have something that has no political interest, like the National Youth Council, to be speaking about the state of the youth.
Mheshimiwa, the reason why you caught the attention of the Kenya Kwanza leadership was not because you were talking, you were doing things. People talk all the time. You were doing things. So anything that leads us to more talk, what it leads us is to more same thing will happen. There will be talk, nothing will happen, no changes will be made. You led by example, you did things. You didn't sit back.
Yeah, sure. And
you persisted. And now you are telling us you want young men to caucus so they can talk.
Actually, out of the platform, talking is one of the things, because it will be, by and large, an institution of offering direction. But there are so many other programs that they can do at the grassroots level. Because, for instance, assume, like for instance, we have so many programs that have been proposed in the manifesto of the current government around the plan. Those programs, if they are youth programs that you'd want in the country, yes, there is a ministry of specified for the youth. But then if there is to be implementation of those particular programs, if we are to bring development partners, which implementing agency, which implementing institution are we going to use at the grassroots level? It is this National Youth Council, because it envisions of having delegates right from the polling station level. So that's why I'm saying the role of this National Youth Council is not just to talk. Talking is just, among other issues, to offer political direction or to offer any direction that the youth would want.
Okay.
But there are other programs that we can take. But be that as it may, let me say this. The disadvantage, or what we are having in our country right now, is that politicians or some characters who are hell-bent of or not respecting democracy are taking advantage of youth or the unemployment rate to drive their political agenda by using them to do this protest that we're having. And they are taking it because of the economic situation that we have in the country. And I like what City talked about. It is not the economic situation that we have in our country is not unique in Kenya, actually. It is a global phenomenon. And I think politicians in our country has mastered the art of taking advantage of the situation, the economic situation that we have, that is not unique in Kenya only, to drive their political interests.
So then young people in this country then do not have a voice. Because for me, if you are going to take any kind of legislation to a regional level, at regional institutional level, there must have been an element of strength at home, localized, that you then build upon and then take out.
Sure.
So if what you're saying then is the case, then we're saying that the institutions for voice-led movements, for voice-led democracies amongst young people in Kenya then do not exist. That young people are still being used as puppets. And it cannot just be by an opposition, then it must be by the government as well to then do what they want. And then essentially we'll see an extension of the same at the regional level. So young people are being used, whether it is government, whether it is opposition. So who in this equation is supposed to stand up and do something?
The people who should do something are we,
Exactly.
the leaders, because we have a responsibility, a divine responsibility, and also a political responsibility from the people. I don't think that blame should be passed to another person. We as leaders have a responsibility in terms of implementation and also offering direction towards sorting out any gap that is there, particularly in our country. And when I say that, I mean the members of parliament, the members of the executive, and other complementary agencies and organs within the sorting out of the youth space and other governance spaces that we as a people would envision. Yes. So the blame is not on another person. It is us, the political class. It is us, the people in the executive. It is us also, the youth. Because if the youth can also get organized. Last week, I have to say, during the weekend, I presided over the launching of what you'd call a caucus on university students, college and university students. Actually, those young people, I congratulated them because during my time when I was at the university, we were not able to achieve what those guys are doing at the county level. They have mobilized young people from my county of Kiambu, and these particular university and colleges leaders, they are from different universities. And they have been able to mobilize themselves, even elected themselves, without the supervision of IBC. They were themselves the IBC. And they were able
and it was peaceful.
And it was peaceful.
And they accepted the results.
The swearing in was very peaceful. I've also had what you would call post-election analysis of what they are currently doing. They are now talking of programs. I've not heard of any dispute.
Did they have some older person telling them what to do?
Zero.
Precisely.
That's the point.
Yes, that is the point. They are doing something. They are not talking about it.
True.
They are doing it, and you can see. And you can see they've understood that these divisions cause problems. So that's the first thing they've done. You bring everybody who is in that particular solar system.
Interesting conversation we've had this morning, Mheshimiwa Maina Karobia, and thank you very much for joining us. You'll come again soon as we continue having conversations on the issue of youth leadership. You've been a national youth leader, and the issue of integration and political confederation, as you say. That's going to be taking place. I think now it's in 10 years' time. Okay, in about 8 years or so. Also, we think. Asante sana for joining us.
Thank you, and I have to say, Eric, thank you for hosting me. The people who are going to drive this particular integration process, our generation, also with the guidance and sharing of experiences from the older generation. Remember, like what City talked about, the earlier dispensation of East Africa had achieved much. There was shared institution and what it was more deeper. Those particular experiences, that particular knowledge is what actually should inform we young people who are coming in terms of the integration process. Yesterday I was sharing a platform with one of the government officials who stayed in Uganda. He is from Kenya. He stayed in Uganda for 8 years. And he was telling me that there are so many opportunities. It is upon us as a country to realize the opportunities that are there in terms of integration. So I think these shared experiences can help us in driving the agenda of integration and unity, the larger unity of the African continent.
Well said.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.